Like I'm Ram Dass, and I've worked on myself, and I'm supposed to be equanimous, loving, present, clear, compassionate, accepting. Oftentimes, I get tired, I'm angry, I'm petulant, I'm closed down. Now, for a long time, I get into those states, and I would feel really embarrassed, because that isn't who Ram Dass is supposed to be. So I would appear like I was warm, charming, equanimous, compassionate, and there was deviousness and deception involved. And then I realized that's bad business, because that cuts us off from each other. And
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. He's on some stuff. Ba-bang. Not gonna minimize that. I mean, we're rolling, so...
I mean, I guess we're here, and it's time to learn with you. I'm hungry for some learning.
And
right
I'm
now.
Mitch.
Oh. And today we're learning from one of Mitch's favorites right now.
I don't have a lot to say. You're welcome.
This is the man himself, Ram Dass. Ram Dass.
Yes.
And today he's talking about how to love yourself, which is something we can all work on a bit.
Nah. Okay.
Welcome to
Instead
class.
of the term, how can we love ourselves more, I'd like to ask, how can we accept ourselves more?
All right. Hey. Not a bad.
That in the way most of us have been socialized, the way in which a child learns, the initial learning, is that the parent is under pressure to socialize the child, to make the child socially functional. And in doing that, they emotionally, whether they intend to or not, reward and punish the child for behaviors. And the result is that when that starts very early, before there is a lot of reasoning process between the parent and the child develops certain emotional feelings that certain ways it is in its natural state are not acceptable.
Yeah. He talks about that sometimes, where he was like, at one point in my life, I realized that I was trying to put on a suit that just didn't fit. And he was, and everyone was saying how lovely the suit looked and how nice it was, but he was so unhappy in the suit. And you just need to shed that suit that's telling you that your nature is not acceptable.
And the suit is kind of like what you are trained to present as in the society, because you got to look good for your society,
right?
Whatever.
Trained by everyone, because everyone's in the society. And I mean, unless you're lucky enough to be raised or go to school where there's someone who isn't, in this societal loop, which is just so rare.
Reminds me of the Maya Angelou we just watched, of Love Liberates, and the fact that like what true love is just such a deep acceptance that you are free to be. Free to be.
Yeah, I just wrote in my journal the other day, which I think this relates, that true joy does not come from feeling joy. Like, joy is not the source of true joy. True joy, the root of it is in stillness. And then similarly, it feels like with true love, it doesn't come from trying to love. True love just comes from full acceptance, and then love is like the thing that grows from the soil of true acceptance. Full acceptance.
Full acceptance.
Yeah.
Full acceptance equals true love. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
And the result is some feelings of unworthiness or inadequacy or something in most human beings as the result of socialization. Very few people ever come through socialization unscathed in some way or other. I mean, that's not an unfair statement, I don't think. So in a way, you could see that ego or personality is in a way built upon, and that's where Freud understood it. He saw that the repression of id, or impulse life, because of the way the society has to deal with a child's impulses to get it to be socialized, usually is left with a feeling that somehow I'm bad. I have these things that are not acceptable. So then you build this social structure, and often what you end up with is a personality that's constantly looking to the world and other people. Do you approve of me? Do you like me? Am I good enough? Am I acceptable to you? And have I achieved enough? And you get an A for effort, and you feel good.
He talks about this sometimes, where we develop this thing where we quickly look into someone's eyes for validation, where we look and we see what we want to see in them. We see the either the dissatisfaction with ourselves, or we see their acceptance of ourselves, but it's all based on one or two things that we've done. You know, it's like, I did the cooking, and I might look in your eyes and be like, are you happy that I just cooked for us? And just like, and then, you know, you either get it or you don't, and then you're completely dependent on all the people around you for all the happiness, sadness, everything.
Because you're always doing these micro checks. Am I doing well? And that's a complete, that's also put in all of the judgment of yourself into a reflection of yourself through somebody else.
Oh, that's good.
So
that's really good.
You're like already having
really
to
good.
Assume what they're thinking about the way that you're feeling.
Because it's all rooted in your judgment of yourself.
And your judgment of their judgment of you. So it's like, and also, but then you need to think about the fact that their experience, you have no idea what they're experiencing. So it could be they're having a really good day. They hated the food you cooked, but you're like, do you like the food? And they're just like, you're like, oh, I did well. Yeah. Or it could be the opposite, that you like did something really good, which is probably the more frequent thing. You didn't do anything wrong, and the person's just going through something, and then you immediately take that in as offensive to yourself.
And then it just happens and happens and happens until you realize that it doesn't matter what the objective truth of how the other people feel around you are. It just doesn't matter. And this is something I really learned from Sadhguru, is like, you could walk down the street, one person you care about praises you for something, you feel elated, you go home, another person you care about says you did something wrong, and you feel down. He's like, how are you going to give someone that power over you?
You're just getting tossed around.
You're just getting tossed around by these other people. You don't give anyone that privilege. And
and I like what Sadhguru also says. He's like, how beautiful that we don't give that to other people. Like, how amazing, how crappy would it be if all of my worthiness was dependent on everyone else's things? Like, then I would have no power over my own worthiness.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you don't get the A, it's not like you feel nothing, you feel bad. And it's as if the baseline is negative, not zero. Do you hear the issue that I'm talking about? Now, so that you're constantly using your life experiences as a way to disprove a basic negative feeling about yourself. That's a very, very common thing in social structure and in human development, in ego development.
Really quick, I love that visual of when you start from a place of judgment, you no longer have zero as the base. You now have, it's either negative or it's positive. And if you get whatever on a scale, if you get a C, you're like, oh, I guess I'm kind of at a 0 out of like A to fail. You know, a C is the middle. But really, because it's already judgment and the only good thing is A, B, whatever, anything below that already becomes down here.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're starting from a place, like more in social interactions, when you're going around, if you're looking to judge people, the first thing is like skepticism, and the negative comes first, and then someone has to like prove their worthiness to you.
It may a little like judge. Oh.
Very nice.
We're making the same. Like, judgment starts with negatives, acceptance starts with 0. Something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that.
Something like that. Sorry for how loud that was.
Yeah, all right. Let's keep going.
Now, so many psychological systems, like Freud's system, for example, works primarily with negative going to zero. That's the domain that you work with. Right behind that is where the spiritual dimension begins, and that's a part that looks at the universe and just sees it as it is. It doesn't see when you've got a negative thing, the opposite, when you're trying to undo it, you could undo it by emphasizing the positive. Like if you don't like yourself, you could emphasize, I love myself, which is how do we love ourselves more is the question. Or we could say, let's go behind love and hate and find a place where we merely acknowledge ourselves, where we just allow our humanity. And we hear that there is negativity in us, and there is inadequacy, and we allow ourselves. And the word that I have come up with, that I'm finding most comfortable to work with, is the word appreciation. That we can just appreciate what is. It's interesting, the way I've looked at it, is that you go out into the woods and into the forests, and you look at trees and you appreciate the trees. You don't say that tree is good and that tree is bad because one tree is fat and one is thin, or one is tall and one is short, or one is bent and one is straight, unless you're in the lumber business. For the most part, you just look at the trees and you appreciate them the way they are. They are what they are, and you can appreciate them. But the minute you get near humans, it's interesting that you immediately go into a judging mode. You come into better and worse. And you do that out of your own insecurity. You do that out of your own need.
Yeah. That's
nice. I like that.
That's real good. Because you're afraid that the people are going to come at you and judge you. So you're going to like lash out in your mind and be like, well, how can I, because I'm being competitive, how can I jump in front of these people? Whereas you go out into nature and you don't have the perception that anything in nature there's nature out there, and right all around. So whatever. You go outside into the woods and you don't feel like you're being judged by all these things. So you don't feel like you have to judge or be competitive with all the trees, the things around you.
It also makes me think of how, were you going to say something else?
I just can't remember.
Oh, okay. If it comes back,
yeah.
Go for it. But that just made me think about the fact that your meditation practice started by like going out into nature and speaking, which is kind of like a no judgment place to speak.
Yeah. Speaking of speaking, what I was going to say is that people who stutter almost always stutter when they're looking in the eyes of someone else, but they'll never stutter when they're singing or talking to animals, or I imagine talking to plants.
Wow.
So just sit with that one. Yeah.
But then continuing, I was going to say, my way of dealing with stress when I was younger was to be out on my trampoline, which was like out in the backyard surrounded by just like trees and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just like fully alone there. And it's interesting because that it just makes you think about what we learned there about how we should deal with our insecurities and such, is that you should go away from people into a different place.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's beautiful that we do have nature that can give this accepting feeling.
Right.
But it's also saddening because we weren't turning towards our friends or parents or things like that. Not saying that our parents weren't good at accepting us for who we were or things like that, but that so much of those relationships are tainted by judgment. Even if maybe our parents weren't going to judge us, we prejudged ourselves in that conversation with our parents.
Yeah, and
so
it's
we were like afraid of doing that.
Everyone that we're in or around is in the loop of society. And it hit me very distinctly the other day that I went out into nature and there was a party going on. And I just had this feeling. I've had this feeling a few times very distinctly where I'm like, I just want to bring people into a certain energy. Come here. I'm not going to come to you. You come here. And the feeling I found out was rooted in wanting to invite people into the space of nature around. Because I realized very distinctly that being enlightened puts you in the majority. It doesn't put you in the minority.
Meaning, like, because plants and stuff?
You look around. I just felt into that the other day. I was feeling very at a higher state than I've reached ever. And I was like, I'm just entering the majority right now. These are the few people out there, these few humans who we always think of as everyone, that are just not with it. But you go out into the woods and you see everything that is with it. And you're just entering the majority when you're opening up to this spiritual work.
That's a hot take that I'll need to think about, but I like the direction of it.
No, it was purely a feeling, not a thought.
Yeah. Nice. Onward.
Constantly to be reassuring yourself. So you're saying that person is got more hair than I do, or that person is see, that's the one I picked. So I wonder why that, or you go into you find dimensions constantly judging and equating. Am I as good as? Am I equal to? Am I as good a mother? Am I as beautiful a woman? Am I as effective a worker? Am I whatever it is, whatever dimension? And you get caught in constantly living in a judging realm. And if you start to practice seeing people as trees, I don't mean in the, in the sense of just appreciating what they are, including yourself. And just starting to appreciate yourself. Appreciate your humanity. Like when I get, like I'm Ram Dass, and I've worked on myself, and I'm supposed to be equanimous, loving, present, clear, compassionate, accepting. Oftentimes, I get tired, I'm angry, I'm petulant, I'm closed down. Now, for a long time, I get into those states, and I would feel really embarrassed, because that isn't who Ram Dass is supposed to be. So I would appear like I was warm, charming, equanimous, compassionate, and there was deviousness and deception involved. And then I realized that's bad business, because that cuts us off from each other. And
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. He's on some stuff. That is something that I've been working through lately, is when I achieve these higher states, like I was just talking about, with like the realizations that I have, and I start to interact with people in a way that's just incredible. Incredible. And then I lose it. It's like I wake up one morning and I'm like, oh, it's gone. And how do you not judge yourself for that? How do you not get really frustrated?
You're like, I was there. What the hell?
And then how do you not try and like fake it until you are there again? How do you, oh my gosh. Because the thought that you have is like, oh, I need to pretend like I'm still there so that no one notices that I'm not there. And then maybe just in the future, I'll just be there again. But that's not the path. That just like that'll just whip you.
It's like the only way to be there is to be there with all of it.
Yeah.
Like that's the only way that higher self is going to come through.
Yeah. The other day I was in a funk and I just was trying to hide it from myself and from the people I was around. And then Eli and I were just going grocery shopping, and I just like said out loud, I'm in a funk. And I just instantly like release throughout my whole body, just from out loud saying it. And that just told me everything I need to know about
accepting yourself there.
Yeah.
Another thing is just how much, I like how he mentioned how much energy it takes to judge.
I missed that. Yeah.
If you get into what I'll often do, if I have something that I'm judging myself for, or like nervous about other people judging me for, I am in constant debate in my mind, playing out them versus me. How am I going to beat their points or whatever and justify myself? But through that, I am literally just spending my time running a wheel in my head that the majority of the time I don't even end up in that conversation. And that's just it. Or if I do end up in that conversation, then I have this whole plot and I get very attached to my argument and try to beat their argument. Man. And maybe I do squash their argument because I'm a genius and I just take them down. But then I just feel shitty because then I'm like, wait a second, that didn't get either of us anywhere.
Wow. Wow. You just went through the whole checklist there. Yeah. That's that whole little cycle. Yeah. In a nutshell. Yeah. And you just go on the loop and you're like, oh, that was dumb. And it's just like, you just keep doing it again. Let's do it again. Yoo-hoo! Wow. Okay.
I had to risk my truth. I had to risk being human with other people and realize that what we offer each other is our truth. Sorry. And our truth includes all of our stuff. And the first thing I had to do was accept my own truth. I had to allow myself to be a human being. And I think that I was very helped by my spook friend, Emmanuel, who, my disembodied friend, who, when I said to him, Emmanuel, what am I doing on Earth? He said, why don't you try, you're on Earth, why don't you try taking the curriculum? Why don't you try being human? And I had always assumed the way to God was to deny your humanity and embrace your divinity. And then I realized that the way to truth might be through acknowledging the fullness of where I found myself to be, which was my humanity and my divinity.
That, in a recent reaction, I was talking about how I've been able to, through Ram Dass's teachings, accept things that seem like contradictions. And being able to see my own and other people's humanity and their suffering and their joys and like all the things that come with it, and then also their divinity, which is like behind all of it. But seeing it at the same moment, I get there sometimes. I can see it sometimes. It's like sometimes you see it most with the people that you love the most. Not even the people you love the most. It's like, it's more certain times, I'd say. It doesn't even have to do so much with the people you love the most. It's more so when you're in a certain state of being where you have that capacity. And then you see it in everyone.
See what in everyone? Sorry,
both the humanity and the divinity at the same time.
Ah, yes.
And you don't just see one or the other, and they're both perfect. They're just perfectly there. And that's another tough thing to lose once you're able to, at one point, look at anyone, and see both at the same time. And then later on, you only see part of it. You only see part of them. You can't really see the whole one, and it doesn't allow you to completely accept them. And you're like, I wish I could, but I can't right now. And then you get frustrated. It's the same thing.
And then again, the only way out of that is to accept yourself for not being in that state of being able to see those things.
And then it'll come back quicker than you would have ever thought.
Yeah.
And not wallow in it, but acknowledge it. And not reverence it or judge it. Just appreciate it. Just allow it. Allow my humanity. So I have gotten to the point now where I am what I am much more. And some people like it and some people don't like it. And if they like it, that's their problem. And if they don't like it, that's their problem. I don't take it all on myself. And, well, it's a slow process. Now, what I found was that as I started to allow myself to be human more, just allowed what I am, things changed much faster in me. I mean, things fell away more quickly. It was as if I was locked into a model which was based on that negativity, that dislike of myself. And once I just allowed that I am human with all the foibles, things started to flow, and I could feel change occurring in myself. And then I would start to experience my own beauty. And it frightened me, because it was so dissonant and discrepant from the model that I had cultivated of myself over the years, that I had to do good in order to be beautiful. And the idea that I just am, that what is, when you look at a tree or a rock or a river, it is in its own way beautiful. I've begun to expand my awareness to be able to look at the universe as it is and see what is called the horrible beauty of it. The horrible beauty of it. There's horror and beauty in all of it, because there's decay in all of it. We're all decaying. I look at my hand, and it's decaying. And it's beautiful and horrible at the same moment. And I just live with that. And with that, I start to see the beauty in it. So we're talking about appreciating what is. Not loving yourself as opposed to not liking yourself, but allowing yourself.
Wow.
Dude.
That's something that I need to work on big time, for sure.
What in specifically?
I was getting there, man.
Okay.
No, the idea of what your own beauty is. Because I think the way that I am frequently judging my own beauty is based deeply in these societal ideas of what beauty should be. You know, and even on like the deepest level that I see myself currently. Well, maybe not like the deepest ones that I've seen ever throughout my life, but like on an average day.
Yeah.
The things that if someone was like, what do you find beautiful about yourself? I'm going to give you answers that are not truly me yet. Mm-hmm. Because in order to get to that truly me, the work he's talking about of like really accepting what you are and then living in that acceptance, only once you're living in that acceptance are you going to experience the things that are truly beautiful. Because that's the only time they're actually going to get to show themselves.
And the things in you that you will see as truly beautiful will be beyond any sort of answer that you could give.
Yes.
You know? Because what's coming to mind for me is, and that Ram Dass has really, really opened me up to as well, is letting go of mental concepts. Because someone asks you, what kind of beauty do you see in yourself? Like, what you would answer them with on a regular basis, or what I would answer with, is probably just a bunch of mental concepts about what I am, which is just your identity, you know? And being able to hold the contradictory things, like the beauty and the ugliness of life. It's perfect. That's like, try that one on. And being able to hold that, that mental concepts can't exist in that. If you're holding that, those can't latch on.
Goes back to his idea about judgment, is that like, right when you create that judging space, you're no longer at zero. And you can no longer see it for what it is. You're no longer clear lens. And maybe that's why the idea of a paradox is okay when you're in a state where you're seeing something as zero, but not when you're judging. Because when you're judging, a paradox makes no sense.
Yeah.
But if you're zero stated, clear lensing it, then you're just seeing, and then it's like, maybe it's a paradox. Whatever.
No, honestly, like every time I'm in that zero state, whatever we want to call it, and you experience like a paradox, or you think of a paradox, it's just funny. It's like, it doesn't matter. You don't need to put it into your brain to intellectualize it, to see which one's right, which one's wrong, or see how they could both be right. It's just funny, and you're like, and it doesn't matter. You realize it doesn't matter. The paradox, it doesn't matter. And it's incredible. It's incredible.
That episode brought us some places.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ram Dass.
Yeah.
And let's all work on accepting ourselves. Appreciating. Like the trees.
Yes.
And we appreciate you.
Much love.
Much love.